What's going on, everybody? It's That One Camera Guy back at again with another video for you. This evening we're going over some new Sony information as well as just some general camera information that's happened in the last week or so. There's been some new updates, especially today, in particular with the Sony A9, and I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about that. There was some news last week about Enthusiast APS-C cameras coming around for Sony, which is sort of what we predicted. Rumors of an RX0 Mark II looking to be around the corner. We just recently got the Imaging Edge software that's now officially released. I'll talk a little bit about that. Also about the Samyang 85 1.4. So I'll chime in on all those different topics this evening. But I want to let you know that this is, I would say, the Not Monday Live show. This week, Jason's out in Hawaii, so he's doing some projects out there. He's doing something. And so I did want to put something together for folks who were looking for a show. So it's more like a podcast. It's not being aired live, just to make it easier on my end. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about these topics and dive into some other things while we're at it. But as far as my end of what I've been doing recently, even since last week, is just busy at work. That's just been sort of the scenario for me. Most of you know I don't do the YouTube stuff full time. It's something I just do part time when I have time for that. I'm a high school teacher by day for most of the day, and I'm typically involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. So it really makes it difficult to produce content for the channel, and that's why there just hasn't been much. It's been busy. Work's been piling up. So hopefully that isn't an issue in the next month or so, and I'll have a lot more free time to work on some projects that I've been itching to do, as well as review some of the products, especially this guy right here, which is the A6400, which I'm sure a lot of you are excited about. I'm also very excited about the Sony A9 as well, especially with the new firmware update, so I want to check that out. And some lens reviews and comparisons that I haven't got a chance to get to. I look forward to doing those as well. And when the summer rolls around, I'll have more time with some other YouTube video projects. So just hang tight, and hopefully they will happen at some point. But I do apologize, and that's really the scenario that we're in. Other things, as far as the show, like I said, this is just one of those listen-in kind of shows. It's kind of off the cuff. I have a basic outline of what's going to happen, and you're going to get both good and bad mistakes, everything inside of this show. I'm not going to really edit it very much, so let's just put it that way. As far as the main topic I want to talk about this evening, there was a post on Sony Off Rumors, I think last week already, discussion with interview with a senior general manager of business. That's what it was titled as. His name goes by Tanaka-san. And this headlining thing about the APS-C enthusiast market, and that we're expecting more cameras, hopefully coming out in that particular group. Sony's been really focused in on their full-frame cohorts, or their full-frame group of cameras, A7 III, A9, A7R3, and lo and behold, we're getting some firmware updates. We just got one recently, and then we're getting more towards the summer, especially with the animal eye autofocus that's coming around. So Sony's put a lot of attention and time, especially in their full-frame group of cameras, and as well as the lenses that they're providing for that particular group. So, we've been wondering, where has Sony been with APS-C? And as all of you know already, the A6400 came around, and for simplicity's sake, it being the flip-out screen, and as well as the updated autofocusing system being sort of the redeeming features of the Sony Alpha 6400. But in terms of this whole enthusiast camera, I made a video talking about the Sony Alpha 6400 and my initial impressions of where it sort of sits in sort of the line of things that Sony is doing. And the biggest problem that I have, there's a lot of great things about the 6400. I'm still working on that camera. I'll talk a little bit about it on the show. But something about it is that it's a stopgap camera. That was one thing I was very specific on. It falls in between the 6300 and 6500, and it sort of shows a little bit of that based on how I've been using it lately. There's certain things about it that are really great, and then you go back to it and you're like, wow, that would have been handy to have on the camera. So the deeper buffer that it's missing on the 6500, the stabilization that it doesn't have like the 6500, but there's also some great things about it, especially versus the 6300. The flip-up screen, the updated autofocusing system, just overall a lot more polished as far as the camera is concerned. And I've been taking advantage of the flip-up screen over the last few weeks that I've had the camera, or month or so. I don't know how long I've had the camera now at this point. But very excited about it, still testing it out. And again, I keep diving into it, which I shouldn't. But point I'm trying to make is that when they released the 6400, my initial thought was that this isn't the Enthusiast or the top-of-the-line APS-C camera. It's not meant to replace the 6500. And this interview with this general manager sort of insinuates now that what we all sort of expected, there's going to be another iterative model that will come out. And this one will probably sit above the 6500. If you follow me on this, there's something about the A9 that hasn't been trickled down into the APS-C line of cameras just quite yet. I don't know if there's some sort of translation issue, but I don't know if they mean enthusiasts or just the pro market. More than likely, the pro market's going to be going towards full frame. And then enthusiasts are those that are just they're really into it, right? They're really into their photography, and they want some of the best gear that they can get. Now, in terms of the Sony A9, the one aspect about this camera that we have yet to see sort of trickle down into the APS-C market is the electronic shutter that this has, that is completely silent and there's no rolling shutter, or it's extremely minimal for that matter. Being able to fire off 20 frames per second with that speed and burst is amazing. And we haven't seen that happen in the APS-C line. And so my initial predictions about this potential Sony A7000, whatever happens to be, is that even though they're saying it's enthusiasts, I think Sony, they will do is probably over-deliver on what the camera might be and just kind of wow people. That's just my gut feeling, that we're going to see some of the technologies that are in the A9, for example, with the electronic shutter. We might see an improved burst rate, maybe up to 20 frames per second in a camera in the APS-C line. And then get all those added benefits, especially with their new autofocusing systems that they already introduced in the Alpha 6400. And that's kind of where I see the new updated camera. And they did specifically state, there were some additional things they mentioned, that they were working on the sports area more. And I mean, the A9 is a great model and a great example to sort of pull from in terms of building out a system that is going to target that particular market. I mean, at that point, sports, wildlife, you name it, it's going to be a pretty great camera in that regards. And then we get even discussion about subject matter tracking, specific subject matter tracking. We're now getting animal eye autofocus, which is coming into these Sony cameras very soon. And it seems that there's some other particular subject matters that they might be focusing on. In other words, your camera will eventually have sort of like a dictionary of information that it can pull from. So I don't know, what other things could you take advantage of with subject or AI sort of tracking? What other things could they determine? So that's going to be very exciting to see. And then finally, they kind of topped it off with some discussion on computational photography. I think that might have to do a little bit more so with things like the Pixel, for example, the Google Pixel phone. For those of you that are familiar with it, it only has one camera, but it takes some really great low light images, and it's really great at being able to do like depth of field or shallow depth of field, and a lot of it's computational to some degree. And so I thought this was something that would be smart to see eventually come to the cameras. It would just make it a complete package and just toss everything into the table. And you definitely want to stand out as far as competition goes, because I think seeing some of the new phones that are coming around, that the phone market, and especially with their camera technology, is improving. And even Sony's own cameras are getting their new low light performance, eye autofocus performance. It's getting crazy what camera phones can do, and it's more of the more challenging circumstances, maybe the event photography, the sports photography, where someone might find some difficulty. But you're now having phones that can take portrait photos to some degree, to some extent, that people will be more than happy to have. So I think it's a smart move to see where computational photography may join in the camera world, and it's exciting to see that Sony is thinking about that. So that is the Enthusiast APS-C camera that might be proposed to come out for Sony very soon. All right, this another news topic I thought was very interesting, and we were already expecting this, that rumors of an RX0 Mark II are around the horizon. There was this image posted on Sony Alpha Rumors with the hashtag vlog with Sony. Now, the first RX0, I'll be completely honest, was not very excited about it. It seemed like an interesting camera, very thought about picking it up, but when you start to see the specs and features of it, it seemed kind of like an incomplete tool. It was very specific in terms of how it was used. I think you guys recall seeing sort of that bullet time kind of scenario. And who is really buying multiple cameras for that? The general consumer is not probably their target audience. Even though they gave it out to a lot of influencers and artisans or collective members to try and push and promote the product, I just don't think it really launched off the ground as really a good tool for most people. So let me know in the comments if you do own an RX0 and whether or not you actually use it. The thing is, I don't recall the price point. I don't know, maybe it was like $400 to $500. But I felt that the Sony Action Cam was a much better tool if you needed to sort of vlog or use it kind of like an additional camera to capture what you were doing. So it's been some time. I don't remember all the specs with the RX0. I just knew it had like a 24mm lens equivalent, I think, on it. And so it just wasn't convenient. What else? There's I think it didn't even have stabilization, and if I'm wrong, I don't even know if it had autofocus on there. So there was just a lot of things missing with it. And so if Sony is planning to bring an RX0 Mark II, you're definitely going to want something that's fairly wide. If it had a screen, that'd be interesting. I don't know if they would, considering the size, but they need stabilization. They need their autofocusing mechanisms built into the system. So stabilization, advanced autofocusing, a way to mount the camera mount the microphone, and I think they had a system, a cage for the RX0 for that. So if we see an updated RX0 Mark II, advanced features, and I don't think you could even get 4K there. That was another thing. You couldn't even get 4K. You had to do it externally, so you had to have an external device. So if it can do 4K, if it could get decent battery life, compete with GoPro, for example, and it had like some amazing gimbal-like stabilization, that would be great. And I think it would be a very appealing option for consumers. So what I think is, I hope the RX0 Mark II is sort of like a GoPro Hero 7, whatever that model might be, and just deliver some advanced things about it that the RX0 didn't have. So very curious to see what it is. I'm probably not the target audience for the RX0 series, but just curious to see if there's anybody out there that owns an RX0. Quickly pivoting really quick, just to let you know that the Samyang 85mm f1.4 FE lens is now available. Looks like pre-orders are open on Adorama for $699. This is an f1.4 lens, and the initial sort of descriptions about it is that it would compete with the G Master lens. Now, if you look at what's available on the market right now, the sort of like a native sort of focusing lens, you have the Sony 85 1.8, you have the Bodice 85 1.8, which oddly enough I own both, and then you have the G Master 85 1.4, which is sort of their standard lens for portrait photographers in that case. So you have Samyang bringing out a 1.4 lens. I haven't had a lot of the last one that I think I used was a 50mm one, and I wasn't very impressed with it, but it looks as if they improved the autofocusing system for this particular model, and so hopefully that's been worked out, and they say image quality will be similar or on par with the G Master. Now, if tests show that, and we see those results soon, I think it'll be an interesting lens to check out, and I think $699 is actually a really good price point if they're able to deliver on what they're saying. $699 for something at 1.4, and I'm just curious to see sort of the sample images that'll come out from that when users finally get their hands on it. So I probably will do a rental on it at some point when I get my hands on it and just do some comparison tests in the future. So we'll be interested to see what that does. Pivoting now to something brand new, if you didn't know, they now have released a new and updated Sony imaging software called the Imaging Edge Mobile, and now it's official on both Google Play Store and on iTunes. It is really just sort of like their Play Memories app, just sort of updated. I did play around with it a little bit with my Alpha 6400, and as far as the way the software is right now, I think the sending photo stuff seems pretty good. It seems pretty snappy. Now I just don't know if the previous app had it, but I was shooting in single shooting mode on my 6400, and it would quickly send a small resized image onto my phone, and it was pretty snappy. It probably took, I don't know, maybe a second or so to transfer the image. Unfortunately, if you're shooting in bursts, you're not going to be able to transfer multiple images. I was hoping that it would have some sort of maybe it's on here. Let me know. I got to do some more research. I just got the software installed, but I think it'd be cool if I could have like low-powered Bluetooth activated, and I can fire off as I'm shooting, and it will send a small JPEG to my phone while I'm shooting or whatever I'm doing as far as the event's concerned. I think that'd be really cool, and that I don't have to unlock my phone. Like, it could do it unlocked and just connect to it and send it as it's able to. Something like the iFi cards back in the day, if you're familiar with those. So I would really like that ability, but right now it looks pretty good. It seems to work a little smoother, but that's all anecdotal right now. I didn't have like a side-by-side test for it, but it's just good that they're doing some updated software out there, which is a must-need. Talking about software, I wanted to go ahead and finally talk a little bit about the Sony A9, especially with the Firmware 5 that's being released. Now, Firmware 5 has been available, not literally Firmware 5, but that autofocusing system has been available in the Sony A6400. And so having been using the 6400, it's just great to be able to see eye autofocus activate on just holding the shutter button. And the tracking is very good in terms of the 6400. And I was using the A9 and the 6400 with shooting sports. I still found the A9 to be superior to the 6400 in terms of burst speed and autofocusing ability. I was shooting softball and baseball, and I tried out the 6400 for a short while, and I jumped back to the A9 just because I wasn't happy with the overall results. Because, again, I'm spoiled with the A9. And so the A9 is just a monster, and I've talked about it before on the live shows. And the A9 is now getting this new updated tracking system, which uses different factors in order to keep locked onto their subject. And some of the initial tests that people have been showing, and you've seen some already, the ability of it just to lock on someone's face as the person turns around, spins around, it just keeps locked on their head and then their eyes. It's incredible what Sony's been able to accomplish, and I don't think there's any camera at this moment that can autofocus at the same speed and precision as the Sony system. If you know another camera, put it down below, but I don't think there's anything that comes close to 20 frames per second, silent shutter, no distortion or very low distortion on the Sony A9. I think Sony decides just to crush the competition. I don't think there's anything else out there. 6400 is great. Having that particular autofocusing system, I don't think we're going to get that same capabilities in the A7 III and A7R III, I don't think, at the same level. So what I do want to say, though, is that the folks who bought into the A9 for retail price when it was $4,500, I think this update's well-deserved. When I got mine, they were very expensive cameras. I know people invested in those cameras because at the time, the A9 was the only full-frame, like, top-of-the-line option, and Sony really pushed it. And I had the whole Sony overheating debacle and all that happened. But I think at this point, if you still own the A9, it's going to be a great addition and great update. So I'm very excited. I'll be probably shooting some baseball or softball on Wednesday. Next day or two, trying out the new firmware. I'm just going to be like another kid in a candy store and just seeing how well the system is working. And it's already great. I just the anticipation of testing it out again with this new firmware just gets me excited. And so I just imagine if they were able to bring this into like the A7 III series or A7R III, that would have been great, but I don't think they're going to get the same exact capabilities. So kudos to Sony on it. We'll test it out and see how well it goes. So I'll probably do the update later tonight, and I'll just be waiting, very excited. And let me know if you're an A9 owner and you are excited about it. I think it's going to be a brilliant update. So very, very good news. Okay, So talking about the 6400 already in terms of rounding it off in terms of the topics this evening, or whenever you see this, the A6400, I haven't been able to shoot with it as much. Like I said, I've just been kind of busy, and usually there's times when I just primarily shoot with the A9 because I need to, and I just need to capture some really stellar images, and I'm using the 6400 as a supplement to what I'm doing just to test it out here and there. But overall, I've been very happy with it in terms of its usage. I would, if at this point in time, just based on my current usage, I'm overwhelmingly happy with what the 6400 has been doing. I use it at work when I need to do videos where I talk to my students, for example. I do tutorials. I'm able to just flip up the screen, use the cage. Now, speaking about the cage, small rig, you probably already saw Jason's video on it, but there's this great little addition that you can put, a very lightweight piece that can offset the placement of the microphone. Genius idea by Small Rig. So I did my pre-order for it, so I'm waiting for that. But I can set up, do my videos much easier this way. Really love that capability. And then, like I said, autofocus system is really great. It's not the same level as the A9, but it's really darn good. And I think if I was to just live on the 6400, I'd be more than happy to shoot with this particular autofocusing system. It's really, really good. I did shoot some video with it. I was shooting 4K at 24 frames per second. I wanted to test out the long form recording on the Alpha 6400. I shot a school play for 2 different nights. It was the same play. I shot I shot about 45 to 50 minute intervals because the play, had an intermission. And so I set it up, had the screen flipped out, shot 50 minutes straight, 45 minutes straight on the card. No overheating, no indicator came on, and it recorded straight all the way through. Stopped it. Actually, when I did do the recording, I left the camera on even during the intermission. So the intermission was about 15 minutes. So imagine the play. Play happens, intermission. So at 45 minutes, intermission. I left the camera on, although I stopped the recording. It was still on. And then I just started it right back up for another, 50 minutes. And the camera did fine. Didn't see any overheating indicator. Now, granted, it wasn't exceptionally warm or anything at this point, but it is warming up in my area where I live. And so it'll be interesting to see how well it handles. But overall, been very happy with it compared to, for example, the 6300. 6300, although it's improved with its overheating situation, this camera is probably going to perform better. But I haven't done side-by-side tests yet. We'll do it soon when it warms up a little bit more just to really push the camera a little further. But overall, very, very impressed with it overall in terms of what it can do. So just kind of like initial impressions in terms of what I would recommend. I think if you're in the market for a 6300, it's still a good bargain, but I would probably encourage people to go straight to the 6400 for that matter. One other thing with which I'll talk more about in my review, is sort of the buffer on the 6400. Now, I know most people aren't going to be spraying and praying when they shoot. If you are kind of at that high end, you're shooting a lot of photos and you just need burst. I pushed the camera quite a bit when I was shooting swim, and it hit a burst. It hit, the buffer hit after about 40 images in RAW. And what the issue that I have with that is it stops me from being able to review images quickly on the camera. So that could be important. You might need to review something. It's kind of locks up. So it still has some of those same issues like the 6300 had or even the 6000 had. But if you're finding yourself shooting quite extensively like that, you might want to consider looking at, the full frame series of cameras if you can budget that, or even the Alpha 6500, which has a deeper buffer system. But you're going to miss out on the updated autofocusing system on this camera. But I think for most people, it's not going to be an issue. Again, I only sprayed and prayed just to push the camera's buffer to see what it would do. But if I was heavily shooting and I was really shooting and firing a lot of different subjects at a shorter period of time, I could see myself hitting that cap once in a while, but not very often. But for most people, it probably won't be an issue at all. So those are the topics that I wanted to go over this evening with you. If you have any questions, let me know down below. I would be curious to see what you have to say, and also chime in on some of the topics that we covered this evening. Again, sorry there was no Monday live. This is your Monday not live. Don't know if it's something I'll be doing often or not, but it's just good to make a video, I guess. It's been a while. So with that said, I'm your host, That One Camera Guy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my other content. Peace.